Hey, this is Alex Kubasek with the ConvertSource podcast. If you are a business that is preparing to launch a brand new digital strategy and you are looking for any sort of pitfalls or anything to avoid before spending thousands, hundreds of thousands, etc., on digital advertising, please tune into this episode. Today is for you. I want to talk to you about how to make sure that you're mastering your digital ads right from the start, and so that you're maximizing your brand awareness and conversion. So if this sounds like something that's going to be beneficial or interesting to your business, stick around.
3, 2, 1.
When you want your leads and sales on autopilot and to accelerate your business, you come to the source. The ConvertSource podcast with Alex Kubasek. Let's go.
All right, what's going on? Today on the ConvertSource podcast, we're going to be talking about mastering your digital advertising and really creating a dynamite brand awareness experience for your prospects, your ideal customers, etc. A lot of times on this show, we talk about knowing your numbers, knowing your ideal customer, and really your targets, and really having all of this built out and understood is probably the better term. Understood to the nth degree before spending a dollar. Now, that doesn't mean that you should wait forever to launch your campaign. So when I say make sure that you know your numbers, your ideal prospect, et cetera, before even launching an ad or launching anything within your business, I want you to make sure that you understand the clear fact that A, digital marketing is always changing, and B, your customer avatar, your ideal buyer, persona, etc., they are going to continually be evolving. So that's why I want to make sure that I, get this content to you guys today, because it's so important to understand how to master digital ads and really make it so that your advertising is set up for success from day one. Because if you don't have that mindset that, things are always going to be changing, but making sure that you're also still launching and testing, if you don't have those two things in place faceted in your mind, you are going to continue to be warped, frustrated, and you may have some success and you may have some failures. But the most frustrating part of all of that is going to be you are not going to understand why. And so today on the show, we're going to be talking about how we're going to be able to make it so that you are mastering your advertising even before you spend a dime, while also at the same time understanding certain mile markers or milestones within your advertising campaigns online to make sure that you can pivot, but pivot appropriately or profitably. So that's what we're going to be going over today. So if that sounds like something that's really going to be beneficial for your business, make sure you stay all the way through to the end, because this is going to be a dynamite show for you guys. So really, it kind of comes down to, okay, we've already talked about in the past so many times, knowing your numbers. In terms of knowing your numbers, I mean, what makes your business profitable online? A lot of people define it by ROAS, which is basically the digital version of ROI. So ROAS stands for return on ad spend. And of course, ROI stands for return on investment. So it's essentially the same thing. But in this case, a lot of people either do it by one of two things. They either do it by ROAS, return on ad spend, and this is how they gauge their profitability or success of a campaign, or by CPA, or cost per acquisition, or cost per result, cost per lead, cost per purchase. All of those things are really interchangeable, but cost per acquisition is the cost of acquiring a new customer or prospect, whether it be a lead or a sale. So we're just going to call it CPA for that matter. And so really, when it comes down to CPA, you might have a client that says, I need leads at $25 per lead. That is a KPI. That's a metric that business knows. I need to be at this CPA or lower to make sure that my business is, these campaigns, these digital ads are staying profitable. Now, of course, we're going to be going over some metrics that are a little bit more high level, because those are going to be metrics as like a compass to really show us, okay, our campaign is going in the right direction, or we need to kind of turn things around a little bit, change the rudder, change course, etc. And I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on how to make sure that you're pivoting appropriately. And so whenever it comes to like ROAS, for example, for the second metric, now there are other metrics that a lot of big businesses like to dial into, and we'll go over those in a second too. But really, when it comes down to it, it's either your cost per acquisition slash lead, purchase, etc., or your ROAS. So you need to make sure that you know in terms of like ROAS, for example, we just talked about like the $25 lead or under. That's the metric they need to hit to be successful online. With like ROAS, for example, a lot of my clients will say, okay, we need to be at a 3 ROAS or better or higher, essentially. And a 3 ROAS means basically when they exchange a dollar into the digital system, everything we talk about here on the show, putting your leads and sales on autopilot, when they exchange and put a dollar into the automated marketing engine, we'll call it, they get $3 back. So that's a 3 ROAS, 3 return on ad spend, because you got 3 times back what you put into the automated engine, right? So obviously, the more ROAS, the better. And the only way that you know ROAS is basically the algorithm will report back to you your cost per acquisition or your purchase amount, right? Your purchase value. Let's say that you sell a program for just simple numbers, $10, and you need to be at a 3 ROAS in order to make sure that you're profitable. So you need to make sure that when you put in $10, you're getting back 30, right? Or better. So I think we've kind of covered that landscape. If you guys have any other questions on that, just feel free to either, wherever you're watching this, if it's on YouTube or if it's on any of the platforms that run with this podcast, feel free to put it, a question in there or send it to support@convertsource.com. That's again, support@convertsource.com. I want to make sure that I'm answering all your guys' questions because we only have some short time together every week. So I want to make sure that I'm continuing to provide some great information. So past that, those are like the 2 granular bottom of the funnel metrics to where you're able to say, okay, my business is profitable and progressing nicely online. I know that as long as my advertising, my campaigns are producing this metric, we're good. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, all right, well, what about like reach and impressions and frequency and all of that jazz? I'm going to let you in on a little secret. As a digital advertiser for the last 13 plus years, impressions do not convert into conversions. So when a lot of businesses, and they're usually bigger businesses because they like to see how many people are we actually touching in terms of like impressions, reach, etc. They like to see those really big fancy numbers. But the thing is that doesn't mean that they always correlate into sales or into leads. And the reason being is because that's not the only thing that matters in a digital advertising campaign. There are a lot of layers to that onion, right? So there's obviously the audience, there's the message, there's the creative, which is like your videos or if you're like on YouTube, it'll be like your videos. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, it's your videos or your images or your slideshows or your carousels. It's, obviously what you present, the message that you present on whichever platform, whichever outlet it is. If it's Google ads, it's obviously going to be, like search ads, you only get text. And sometimes you get extensions that can have pictures added to them, etc. But you see what I'm saying. In this case, impressions, like I said, do not always correlate into conversions. Whatever your metric is, cost per lead, leads, or sales. And the reason being is because of so many of those steps in your funnel. Because past the advertising component, you then have a landing page or a destination URL or somewhere that you're sending them in order to express your expertise, brand yourself. You can do a ton of things. You can be trying to capture leads with an ebook or a video series or a webinar. And, obviously, like we were talking about before, you might need to capture those leads at $25 a lead or cheaper, right? But you then also might be sending them, if your goal is ROAS, you might be sending them to, your product page on your Shopify store or something like that, or your skincare website, etc. a lot of people also ask, well, is it always just either or, like cost per lead, or can sometimes there be several metrics? Yes, 100%. That is a much more dialed in conversation. Just kind of like quickly, if you are a business who is trying to sell big ticket items, so coaching, um, uh, courses, etc., trainings, what have you, programs, all master classes, masterminds, all of these different things that are very high ticket items. Usually what you'll do is you'll need to provide some results in advance, right? Some value ahead of time to really sell your customer on why such a big investment. So you might have an automated webinar that you're running, right? That's running 24/7, 365. I highly recommend them because they convert. This is where we're saying, okay, well, we're doing both. We are asking for somebody to come in and say, okay, here's a webinar that we would like to train you or show you how to get this result, right? And of course, it's a webinar that's about everything that, you're introducing yourself, you're introducing your business, your expertise, all of the components that can be received with this particular training in mind or this particular thing in mind. And that thing will teach you how to do in our course. And so what you'll do is you'll have like a $5,997 course that ultimately you want people to convert on. So you brought in a lead, right? Cost per lead or CPA for $25, let's just say. And then you converted on average a certain percentage that, let's say that you spent $100, you got a handful of leads, and let's say one of them converted. Now, of course, that is a really dialed in funnel and automated system, because if you spend $100 and you get back 6,000, that 5,997, you got a really good funnel, and scale that monster. And of course, if you need to learn how to do that, we do that all the live long day. That's our bread and butter. Support@convertsource.com. Reach out. We'll have a quick conversation, see how we can help you. But in this case, we're talking about being able to exchange money, right? Get a lead, but then also convert them on a sale on the back end as well. So that's where you can see both of them really intersect. But back to impressions, reach, some clicks, more vanity metrics. The reason why they don't always correlate directly into conversions is because it might look really good with, you're reaching a lot of people because you're spending a lot of money on whatever platform, right? You're reaching a lot of people because you're spending more money on that platform. You're getting a lot of clicks because your ad sounds enticing, but then whenever they hit the landing page, they don't convert because the landing page isn't dialed in. The message is not dialed in. The video that you're putting on there to introduce whatever you're asking them to do with you is not relative to what you pitch to them on the ad. Okay, so you can start to see where there are other components that we call leaks in your funnel that can make it so that people fall off. They drop off of your funnel. On your customer acquisition journey, they drop off. So that's why, yes, it's great to have, all this reporting and numbers. We had a ton of impressions. We increased our impressions by 30% month over month, or we increased our clicks, blah, blah, blah. That's fantastic as long as it's correlating directly into leads or sales, right? Because that's how we know whether our digital advertising, our, mastering our digital ads is working. And obviously that means that in a continuous process with everything that we talk about on this podcast, you need to make sure that you know your numbers. Because if you know your ideal customer, within reason, right? Because they're always evolving, they're always changing, because there are different things to do on these platforms, different ways that they buy, they engage, etc. But that's why we have a digital medium outlet that's on autopilot, because it speaks to them at the right time that they need to receive your message 24/7, 365. That's everything that we teach here. That's everything that we practice daily here. So that being the case, it's important to say then, okay, here's the person I need to touch. Here's the message that is solving a problem for them. One problem, one solution. Then here are the metrics that I need to make sure that I'm hitting to be profitable with the money that I'm exchanging. And so when I know those things, I can make sure that I keep an eye on my campaigns. And as long as I'm producing those numbers, I know that I'm mastering my digital ads. I'm mastering my brand awareness. Other metrics that are starting to go a little bit down further on the funnel to get granular all the way to that like cost per lead, that cost per acquisition, that ROAS, etc., are things like clicks, cost per click, click-through rate. The reason why those are more telling, and these were like what I was talking about before with like the compass that points you in the right direction, because when you exchange $1 for an eyeball or a set of eyeballs, you're going to get data back immediately that says, okay, we reached these many people clicked, let's just say, or watched an entire video, etc., whatever your value action is. And this is how many people then converted. Okay, so think of it that simply for this moment, because on like Facebook and Instagram, for example, and this is pretty much the general rule of thumb across multiple social ad platforms. And in the description today, I will make sure that I put like a little KPI resource for you guys that shows you most recently what metrics your industry specifically should be hitting, your benchmarks, really something that's going to help you say, okay, since this is the first time I'm doing this, maybe, or here are basically the metrics that you need to be hitting per your industry. Because so many people don't know those things whenever they first start. It's really nice to kind of be able to get the answers to the test ahead of time. So I'll make sure that I put those down below for you. So in this case, something like a cost per click, okay? Because you'll go like impressions, reach, then clicks, and then you'll go to, conversions, et cetera, all the way down through your funnel, whatever your funnel value actions are. And so whenever you have cost per click, typically on like social ad platforms, for example, it's either going to be cost per click, or like on Snapchat, it'll be cost per swipe up or something like that. But that value action to go from that platform to your message, whether it's a lead, for a webinar, an ebook, skincare products, etc. Typically, we want that cost to be about $1.50 or better. Now, a lot of people might be saying, all right, well, my campaigns are doing 2 cents a click. Here at ConvertSource, we usually only optimize campaigns unless there's a different strategy to help bolster awareness. We don't like to exchange $1 to not get something in return. So we specialize in direct response digital advertising, making sure that your dollars are returning something to your business, not just spraying and praying and throwing a message out there and seeing how many people click on the ad, because that optimization or objective on any platform, that even though it gets eyeballs, it's not optimized to discover the ideal person who will convert with you. Whereas if you optimize your campaigns for a conversion metric, then because you've already built in your ideal customer to your campaign, who are you targeting, you know your numbers, you can then, that is like you steering the algorithm to say, okay, here is the person that I want to do business with, here is the metric KPI I need to be at for a conversion, and I'll be happy. It's really that simple a lot of the time. So really, with that cost per click or that cost per swipe up being at like $1.50 or better, yes, that does seem higher than like a 2 cent cost per click or cost per view, but the value and the conversion pace that you're going to be getting from that campaign and the cost per acquisition or the ROAS you're going to be getting out of that is going to be far faster and far better than something over here that's like just only optimized for clicks to website or something like that. You're going to be waiting a whole heck of a lot longer to get a conversion with only using a clicks to website type of objective on these platforms versus optimizing for a conversion. So you might invest a little bit more up front, but it will pay off on the back end because you'll be getting people into your funnel who are your ideal prospect or close to that to be able to then close them, whether it's on a program, a training, a mastermind, or products, etc. So you're starting to follow that. So a lot of the time, people will then say, okay, well, you know, there are many different excuse me, not conversion objectives, but well, there are, but many different ways to optimize a campaign. So, like, for example, I was just talking about clicks to website versus conversions, or just simply brand awareness or brand recall, or boosted posts. God, that is, I hate it whenever people say to boost this post because that particular algorithm is not meant to put this in front of people who are going to convert with you. It is meant to just give you some social proof, some likes, comments, and maybe even some shares on a particular piece of content or post that you did, etc. It's not meant to actually get people to click through to your message. So you might see a lot of like impressions and you might even see a lot of clicks, but those clicks are not going to be mostly clicks to your message. They'll be like likes, comments, shares, clicking that little like read more in order for people to like expand your ad copy or anything done on the platform on that ad. So even though your vanity metrics, like your impressions, your reach, sometimes your clicks are high, you'll notice that that campaign that you boosted is still not producing any really leads at a good cost or even any sales because it's not that algorithm on these platforms was not designed to get you conversions. So you're now starting to see the importance of conversion type objectives. Now, of course, there are many ways to structure your campaigns to help costs, to help move people quicker through your funnel, etc. And we can get into that in another show. But if you have any questions on that you need some help with like more sooner than that, support at convertsource.com. Support at convertsource.com. Reach out to us. We'll have a chat. It's no obligation. We'll see if you know how we can help you in your business. But really, now we're talking about pivots. People are always like, okay, so I'm kind of hitting around my numbers, but I'm not converting. What do I do? So now we're in troubleshooting mode, right? We've been running for a couple of weeks. Depending on how big your budget is per day in terms of spending, you might be able to start to look at these trends, KPIs, benchmarks, after a few days to make any pivots, as long as your campaigns are set up correctly. But if your cost per click on like a Facebook campaign is $1.50 or under, and your click through rate is anywhere from 1% or better on average, that's really the click through rate that percentage that Facebook and Instagram, for example, really like to see and consider that a successful start to a campaign. Meaning that if your cost per click is low enough and your click through rate is above 1% or high enough or even higher, that means that your message is starting to go to the right person. Simply put, those two metrics being at that type of scenario, your cost per click is lower, your click through rate is higher, you're going to the right people, and your ad is getting attraction and it is relevant to the people that you are targeting, your prospect, your buyer, your customer avatar. So that is like the compass that makes it so if we have to make any slight adjustments. Now, in that troubleshooting scenario, let's say, for example, that your click-through rate is high, right? It's above that $1.50 or higher, and your click-through rate is really high. Well, then you're like, well, crap. Shit, what am I supposed to do now? Like, this is a paradox. I don't know what to do here. What this most likely means is that there are a lot of competitors in that water. So we've talked about like bodies of water where your customers are before, where you're fishing essentially. Well, there's a lot of sharks in that water. If the click-through rate is really high, most likely if the click-through rate is really high and the cost per click is really high as well. So you're probably like, oh, well, shit, I don't know what to do. I can't spend any more money. Well, there are a lot of things that you can do. All right. The first thing that I would recommend is I would let it run for a little bit. Let the algorithm optimize itself to do what it's supposed to do. If after a week or two you're still seeing like a high cost per click and you're still seeing a high click through rate, and your cost per acquisition is still higher, what I would then recommend doing is first going in and seeing what pieces of creative or what ad copy or really what is working first on the platform, on your ads. What is working first? What are people responding to the best? And what I would do is I would simply quickly duplicate that campaign, and I would take away all the garbage, all the stuff that's not converting, not getting me good clicks, not getting me good click through rate, not getting me good costs, trends, etc. Relaunch, same budget, just remove the trash, let it run for about another week. Once you do that, take a look at your click through rate and take a look at your cost per click. If you start to notice a drop in your cost per click, now you're actually able to say, okay, I didn't spend any more money, but I'm starting to see better results. So let's let this ride for a little bit more. Let's get some more people into my funnel. Depending on what your business is, I would start to, if you notice that your conversion cost or your conversion rate is still a little bit high, like instead of being at $25 a lead, you're at $35 a lead or what have you. As long as you're getting leads into the funnel in a competitive space, I would simply pick up the phone and I would just start following up with these people. Do a little bit of sweat equity just to make sure that you're either gathering intel. Like, let's say that somebody became a lead and they didn't really end up wanting to buy because of this, that, or the other thing. Still get some information from them. Do some recon. Ask them what they liked about the ad. Ask them what their business is, because these types of questions can kind of help you start to say, okay, I've got a, if most people say they're from this industry, now these digital ads are starting to tell me what industry I need to start going toward because they're responding to my message the best. Most of these people that reply and pick up the phone and talk to me, they're saying, all right, well, the reason why is because we liked this particular message the best. And so now, even though they might not have converted or it's not yet, you're still getting valuable information to help drop your costs and increase your conversions. So these are, so many people are so focused on, I need sales now. Believe me, I get it. I started this business from absolutely nothing as well. So I know how hard it is to be patient. I get it. One of my mentors early on in this, when I was first learning all of this and I wasn't getting results fast enough, the thing that has stuck with me the most that they said was, when you launch a campaign, whether it's advertising where you're spending money or an email marketing campaign or something online, launch it, do yourself a favor, pour a glass of wine or two, depending on how many you need, but pour yourself a glass of wine, take a chill, sit for 3 to 5 days, come back, take a look at it. Because if you look at it too often, you're going to drive yourself crazy. But also, if you're one of those refresh warriors, you're going to drive yourself crazy. But also, you might make a pivot that you didn't need to. Because if you do it prematurely, you might, based on your daily budget, you might not have given the algorithm enough time to get through enough to be able to strike gold. So all of that impatience and all of that refreshing didn't help you. It gave you more stress. It was like a rocking chair. It gave you something to do, but it didn't go anywhere. And also, you may have prematurely made a pivot right when you were about to strike gold. I think everybody has seen that picture where it's like that animated graphic where two guys are stacked on top of each other. They're both hacking away underground to get to gold, and they're both like literally inches away. One continues to crack away at it, the other one starts to walk away. You got to give it a little bit of time. And that's why you have to know these KPIs, these benchmarks, these numbers to know if it's time to pivot or not. So in terms of like another way that, of course, you can always spend more money. You might not need to, and that's why you got to know your numbers. But another way to make a pivot in this with your campaign online, if because today we're talking about digital ads. Like I said, remove the trash if you need to. Take out the trash to start producing some better metrics. If that's still giving you a little bit of irritation, then what I would start to do is I would start to say, okay, if I can't necessarily afford to spend any more money yet, I would put together a little bit of a bid strategy. I call it the bullying method. Essentially, what it is you're going to put some metrics in place that say to the algorithm, I'm willing to spend this much to get a lead. And typically, you're going to basically what you're doing is you're telling the algorithm, I'm willing to outbid my competitors for this lead. You're not going to spend that per the lead because it's going to be such an astronomical number that you're going to win the bid essentially, and you're going to push all the other competitors out of the yard. And you're going to be the one that's left holding the goods because you were telling the algorithm, I'm willing to spend the most money. It's like gambling. It's like poker. I wouldn't say gambling, but it's like having a tell, or not having a tell, but being able to make it so that you are willing to spend, but since you've already outbid everybody else, they're all going to back away and just leave the low hanging fruit for you. So in a sense, they're kind of like helping slingshot you forward. Now, if that doesn't, and if that only lowers your cost per click and increases your click through rate a little bit more, then we might want to start talking about an incremental spend. Incrementally. Typically, the general rule of thumb is you only want to scale your campaigns, meaning spend just a little bit more money, put a little bit more fuel in the tank, once per week from about 10 to 20% of your daily ad spend. So let's say that you want to be at $25 per lead, but now you're at like 32 after all of these optimizations. What you're going to do is you're going to tell the algorithm and program it this way and say, okay, I want to start to lower my cost per lead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a automated rule in place, because we're all about automation here, automating your leads and sales. You're going to put in an automated rule that says only scale once per week, 10 to 15% of my daily ad spend, once per week, if my cost per acquisition, whether it's a lead or sale, is this number or lower, or this, or like if it's ROAS, obviously this ROAS or higher, etc. So what this means is that your campaign is not going to scale if you are not hitting these metrics. So while you're sleeping at night, your campaign is not spending money unless it's profitably. Now, you might say, okay, well, but it's not going to scale if I'm not necessarily hitting my KPI yet, my benchmark, the cost per lead or sale that I want to be at. Well, what you do is you kind of give it a little bit of a nudge. Before you put the automated rule in place, you do one scale manually yourself. Then you put the automation in place, you pour yourself a glass of wine, and you walk away for a couple of days. When you come back in a couple of days, you look at your cost per click and your click-through rate, and you start to then see, okay, this is my kind of direction here. So those are 3 levels of optimizations that you can do that aren't going to cost you a ton of money, but they are going to make all the difference in the world in terms of telling you where you need to go. So these are all fantastic ways to master your digital advertising, because it's all continuous of one another. It's all leading to the land of Oz. This is the yellow brick road that we're building here. You need to know your prospect, your buyer persona, everything about them in the most detailed fashion. You need to know your numbers for what you're willing to leverage in order to get back. And then you're going to need to know, and I'll put this in the description below, I'm going to give you a little bit of a head start. You're going to need to know your numbers per industry, per platform, to be able to say, okay, we're heading in the right direction. I don't want you to spend a lot of money just completely willy-nilly. So I'm going to give you just 2 resources that are going to help you start your campaigns off the right way and make sure that you're getting that point north. So guys, I hope that today's episode was really valuable for you. We went a lot deeper in this in terms of like some troubleshooting, in terms of really just mastering your digital ads, because anybody can launch an ad campaign. Anybody can put together, with all the tools out there these days, anybody can put together an ad campaign. But what really matters is, how do we make it work for our KPIs? How do we convert? And then once we figure out all these metrics and these people that we want to reach, how do we automate it? How do we scale it? How do we scale it profitably? That is what ConvertSource does. That is what this show is all about. That is what we live, eat, sleep, breathe, etc. every single day. So if you guys need some help with your campaigns, or if you want to chat, if you want to shoot the shit, if you want to, anything you guys need, we are all about helping millions of businesses across the world enhance and enrich the lives of their customers with their message. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you have all of these pillars in place to automate your leads and sales, to grow your business, to affect more people in a positive fashion with your business, your message. That is what we do. That is our mission. Your success is a KPI of ours. I say this all the time. So if you guys need any help, any clarity, anything at all, support at convertsource.com. I encourage you to share this with somebody who needs it. Another business owner, somebody who might not have a ton of cash but needs some resources and can't afford a big agency, or can't afford, gosh, my nose is really itchy today, or can't afford a hugely expensive course. Support at convertsource.com. We want to help you. We want to help you in your business so that your life can be enriched and all of the lives of your prospects can be enriched as well. We're really pushing this H2H marketing, this human-to-human marketing, because we're helping you solve problems in your business to solve problems in other people's lives and businesses. Support at convertsource.com. I can't wait to talk to you guys. Please leave a comment. Let us know how we're doing. I look forward to talking to you, and I will see you guys next week. Enjoy, guys.
When you want your leads and sales on autopilot and to accelerate your business, you come to the source. The ConvertSource Podcast with Alex Kubasek. Let's go.